We all know how suicidal allied units in Fire Emblem are. But what if we harness that self-destructive energy into an interesting gameplay interaction? Welcome to the first episode of Cursed FE Ideas, where I talk about borderline shitpost game mechanics that the Fire Emblem developers are simply too cowardly to implement. And the first one I have for you today are evil, cursed weapons that turn you into a green unit. Fire Emblem has had many weapons with side effects tied into their narrative. The Devil Axe appears frequently in many FE games and offsets its immense power by having a chance to backfire onto its user. In Fire Emblem 5, Theresia 776, Marita is possessed by the Shadow Sword given to her by Raedric and forced to fight her former allies. In Fire Emblem 8, Volter used to be a normal person before he was corrupted by his cursed lance. And in Fire Emblem Three Houses, the use of heroes relics without a crest can result in people turning into demonic beasts. These are just a couple of examples, but the gameplay implementation of most of them is at most surface level. The Devil Axe is a good example of this implementation because of its unique self-damage mechanics that reflect its description, but Marita's Shadow Sword has no such mechanics that reflect its narrative purpose. We only know of Valter's Cursed Lance because of a support conversation, and the gameplay implementation of using a relic without a crest in Fire Emblem Three Houses is just taking 10 damage after combat. But I think it's reasonably possible to make this concept even more immersive within the programming confines of the games. There's also a lot of work for this very specific thing, but be gone with the reasonable explanations. We don't do that here. Here's what I propose: an evil, cursed legendary weapon that possesses its wielder by turning a playable character into a green unit while it is equipped. The possessed unit should have behavior fitting for a warrior that has completely lost their mind. Uncontrollable, charging into the fray, attacking enemies with no abandon, prioritizing taking the lives of their foes over their own survival. And what else in Fire Emblem replicates this crazed bloodlust with no regard for personal safety? Standard Fire Emblem allied unit AI. Allied units in Fire Emblem, or green units, are already famously known for their suicidal fervor for battle, in direct contrast to the more careful, measured approach that most players use. So simply turning a player character into a green unit would have the desired effect. The gameplay story integration of this already built-in mechanic is solid. So now we need to think of some possible upsides for using the weapon. Obvious musts are increased might and accuracy, but optionally skill effects such as Savage Blow might be interesting. Perhaps there could also be a small increase to defense or a heal on kill ability to help the character survive on their own. The sky is a limit here, but I think it's more interesting to dwell on the possible downsides because that's where the cool interactions happen. And I think many of the downsides should center around how easy or difficult it is to exit the possessed state where your character has become a suicidal green unit. I'll talk about a couple of ideas. Idea 1. The unit is uncontrollable until the map ends, and this will be the most stringent requirement because you're basically on a pseudo escort quest the moment you start using the cursed weapon if you want that character to live. You'd have to keep up with their possessed character or try to find some clever way to trap or box them in, just like a normal green unit. Alternatively, the possessed weapon could be strong enough to even make an untrained character usable, so sacrificing them to the demonic weapon might be a useful strategy for the less morally inclined. My second idea is that the possession could have a limited duration, either in terms of turns, weapon durability, or number of kills after initial use. This wouldn't be as bad, as while you will lose control during a fight, you will regain control and be allowed to group up and prepare for the rest of the map without triggering enemy formations or reinforcements early. My third idea is to use a restore step for some kind of limited resource to calm a unit down, though this is only interesting if these restore options are limited and have active competition for use on other things such as enemy status effects or debuffs. My fourth idea is that you could possibly unequip it from the wielder by taking it with another character, possibly by using the trade mechanic, and this will allow you to spend another character's actions to stop the other, but this may be a bit too easy. Possibly, another alternative could be that by taking the weapon, the character that takes the weapon becomes possessed instead, like some kind of demonic hot potato. So that's what could happen if you try to use the weapon, but what if you try to avoid using it? I got some ideas for that too. If you try to get rid of the cursed demonic possession sword, then maybe it should still stick around. For example, if you drop it on the ground, then in the next map a random enemy will have it, and use it against you. Maybe if a unit holding it is defeated, then the enemy could take the possessed weapon, be possessed, and fight against you. Maybe if you try to sell the weapon, then the merchant gets possessed and attacks you next map, joining as an enemy. And finally, maybe if you try to put it in the convoy, then the character that manages your convoy is possessed and joins the map as a character. Imagine Berlinus charging into battle possessed by a demon sword. The possibilities are endless. Anyway, these are my ideas for possible downsides for a strong cursed weapon that has more gameplay story integration behind its power. Having the cost be directly related to gameplay decisions in a way that makes sense narratively makes it much more interesting, I think, than just taking damage. Obviously, this would be a huge pain in the ass to implement, and I think the whole game would have to be designed around it. But whatever, it's just fun to think about. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any cursed ideas you'd like me to talk about. Thanks for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and see you next time.